A week before my son's wedding, I overheard my family planning to use me as a babysitter for about 15 children during the entire reception. So I changed my plans. On the wedding day, my son called me in a panic, asking where I was. I laughed and told him not to wait for me or the buffet I had promised to make. My name is Charlotte Fitzgerald. I'm 72 years old, and I never thought I'd have to teach my own family such a hard lesson. For months, I had been preparing for my son Marcus's wedding. I offered to handle the whole buffet to save them money, even though it would cost me around $3,000. I also planned the decorations, centerpieces, and worked with the vendors. It was my gift, my way of showing love and happiness for my son finding love again. When Marcus introduced Tiffany 2 years ago, she seemed perfect. She was polite, called me Mrs. Charlotte, brought flowers, and always offered to help. Marcus was happy, and after years of being a widower, that made me happy too. One Tuesday afternoon, while making the final shopping list, I heard voices on the patio. Marcus was on the phone, and Tiffany was talking to her sister Audrey. I wasn't listening until I heard my name. I moved closer to the window and stayed hidden. Tiffany told Audrey that everything was organized for the kids because Marcus's mom would watch them all night. There were about 15 kids, but she said I was used to it, so the adults could enjoy themselves. Audrey laughed and called it smart, saying the old lady would handle the kids while they had fun. Tiffany laughed and said they never even asked me directly. Marcus just mentioned there would be kids, and I offered to help. She called me a free nanny and said I wouldn't even eat much of the buffet I was making. They both laughed. Standing there with flour on my hands, spending my money, time, and energy for their wedding, I felt deeply hurt. After 72 years of always putting family first, this was how I was treated. As if I were a servant available all day and night. I stood behind the curtain, feeling anger rise through my body. But it wasn't only anger. It was pain, disappointment, and deep humiliation that made my chest hurt. For 2 years, I had treated Tiffany like the daughter I never had. I welcomed her into my home, included her in family traditions, and even shared our secret recipes. Tiffany kept talking, unaware I was listening. She said that since I would be busy with the kids, I wouldn't interrupt adult conversations or tell stories about Marcus as a child. Audrey laughed and agreed, saying mothers-in-law were always annoying. Tiffany laughed too and said Marcus thought I was helping out of love. She said men were naive. When Marcus came back, Tiffany changed her tone and said everything was organized. She told him I would watch the children. Marcus proudly said I was always happy to help. Tiffany quietly called it convenient, and Marcus didn't notice. I walked away feeling sick. I couldn't believe that the woman who acted so loving for 2 years saw me as a free worker and a burden. I went to my room, shaking, and sat on my bed. I looked at old family photos and thought about how I had spent my whole life being a good mother. I thought I was gaining a daughter, but instead I was just being used. For the next few days, I acted normal. When Marcus called, I said everything was ready. When Tiffany told me to relax and enjoy the wedding, I smiled and agreed. But inside, I was planning. I wasn't going to let them treat me like a servant. 3 days later, I called my best friend Loretta. We had been friends for over 40 years. I told her everything. She was angry for me and called Tiffany a snake. Then I told her I had a plan and needed her help. Loretta loved the idea and promised to support me. On Thursday, I started my plan. I called the caterers and canceled the buffet orders, paying small fees. Then I canceled the flower arrangements. On Friday night, I packed a small suitcase with clothes, medicine, and personal items. Marcus called to check if everything was ready. I calmly told him yes. He thanked me for everything. I told him the day would go exactly as planned. That night, I barely slept, not from worry but from excitement. On Saturday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., full of energy. I got dressed in my favorite coral dress. It wasn't my wedding dress, but it felt right. Loretta arrived at 7 with her bags and a smile. She asked if I was ready for freedom. I told her I had been waiting for this moment for years. We were heading to a luxury spa 2 hours away. The money I had saved for the wedding buffet, I was finally spending on myself. Before leaving, I wrote a letter and placed it on the kitchen table where Marcus always sat. Dear Marcus, by the time you read this, I'll be enjoying a well-deserved rest. For months, I prepared everything to make your wedding perfect. But I learned that you and Tiffany had other plans for me. My role was to babysit 15 children all night without anyone asking me. Since the buffet was also part of those plans, I canceled everything. I hope you find a solution. I'll be back Sunday night. With love, but with dignity.
Mom.
While Loretta loaded the car, I looked around my house one last time. The kitchen where I planned to cook all night, the dining room with the centerpieces, the living room with flower arrangements. All of it was done with love, but that love had been mistaken for obligation. Loretta asked if I was sure. I told her I was 72, and if I didn't stand up for myself now, I never would. The drive to the spa felt freeing. We talked about our lives and laughed about simpler times. Back then, love was accepted as love, not as service. We arrived at the spa at 10 a.m. It was beautiful and peaceful. The receptionist welcomed us with drinks and asked if we were celebrating something. I smiled and said I was celebrating my independence. In my room, I imagined the chaos back home. Around 11:30, my phone started ringing. It was Marcus. I ignored it and turned my phone off during my massage. For the next few hours, I relaxed completely. Good food, kind service, and no responsibilities. Later, I turned my phone back on. I had many missed calls and messages from Marcus and even Tiffany. The messages became desperate, asking where I was, where the food was, and who would watch the kids. I called Marcus back. He answered immediately, panicking. I told him calmly that I was at a spa enjoying myself. He said the guests were there was no food, and Tiffany was crying. I reminded him of my letter and said I canceled everything when I learned I was supposed to be a nanny, not a guest. Tiffany then took the phone and demanded I come back. I told her I changed my mind when I realized I was being used. She complained about the children. I suggested hiring a professional nanny and mentioned her sister Audrey. There was silence. Marcus asked if I had heard their conversation. I told him I heard everything. I repeated their words about me being an old lady, a free nanny, and someone to keep busy. This time, no one spoke. A child screamed in the background, and someone shouted about a missing kid. Marcus begged me to come back and even offered money. I laughed. I told him there wasn't enough money to make me return. I explained that if he had money to pay me, he had money for a caterer. It was just easier to use his mother. Marcus fell silent. Loretta smiled and poured me more wine as Marcus's voice finally began to break. Please don't do this to me. It's my wedding. Marcus, I'm not doing anything to you. You and your fiancé decided I was your personal employee without asking me. I'm simply refusing that role. You assumed you had free food and free childcare, but that's called poor planning. Tiffany shouted that we would never be forgiven if I didn't come back. I calmly told her there was nothing to forgive. She tried to use me, and I chose not to be used. When she called me selfish and blamed me for ruining her wedding, I told her she ruined it herself by valuing money over respect. I refused to be part of my own humiliation. Marcus said the kids were out of control. The cake was ruined, and parents were angry. I asked about Audrey, the sister, who laughed about me watching the kids. Suddenly, Audrey claimed she didn't know it was her responsibility. How convenient. I told Marcus I was hanging up because my massage was waiting. I reminded him that I wasn't his employee, but a 72-year-old woman who deserved respect. I told him I wasn't coming back and that he and his wife needed to think about what family really means. I ended the call and put my phone on silent. Loretta clapped and asked how I felt. I told her I felt free for the first time in 2 years. Sitting by the lake, I felt peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Loretta asked if I was sure. I told her that because Marcus was my only son, this lesson was necessary. Otherwise, he would learn to treat his own mother like a servant. For hours, my phone kept vibrating, but I ignored it. We enjoyed the spa. In the jacuzzi, I realized that for 2 years I had tried so hard to please Tiffany that I lost myself. The more I helped, the less she respected me. My love looked like weakness to her. That evening, I checked my phone. There were dozens of missed calls and messages. Guests were upset, parents had left, and they had ordered pizza. Tiffany was crying. Family photos were ruined. Audrey messaged saying it was just a joke. I laughed. Using someone for free is not a joke. One message stood out. A guest's mother wrote that several parents were angry, and what they did to me was wrong. I showed it to Loretta. She agreed that any decent person would see the truth. Later, my sister-in-law Elena called. I told her everything. She said I did the right thing and that my late husband would have defended me too. She said many relatives were on my side, and that it was time Marcus opened his eyes. That night, I sat on my terrace with a glass of wine, watching the stars. My phone kept vibrating, but it no longer bothered me. If they were truly sorry, they would have apologized instead of trying to pressure me. Before sleeping, I read Marcus's final messages. The wedding was a disaster. Tiffany blamed him. Then he asked why I was doing this and said he thought I loved him. That message hurt, but it made one thing clear. This was never about love. It was about respect. I replied to him, Marcus, it's because I love you that I won't let you treat me like an employee. A son who loves his mother doesn't use her or allow his wife to mock her. I love you, but I also love myself. The reply came immediately. Marcus texted me saying Tiffany thought it might be better to move to another city because she couldn't live near someone who ruined her wedding. I read it 3 times before replying. Tiffany was trying to emotionally pressure him. I told Marcus that if Tiffany wanted to move to avoid facing the consequences of her actions, that was their choice. But a woman who truly loved him would never pull him away from his family as punishment for something he didn't do. There was no reply after that. I stayed on the terrace late into the night, listening to the lake and feeling calm. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't worrying about pleasing anyone. I was thinking about myself, about the 72-year-old woman who had raised her son, shared a long marriage, survived widowhood, and deserved respect. That night, I slept better than I had in months. On Sunday morning, I woke up feeling rested and peaceful. My phone had been silent all night. Either Marcus understood or he was angry. Both felt better than being manipulated. At breakfast, Loretta said I looked lighter. I told her it felt like I had finally put down a heavy burden. We talked about future plans and trips we had always postponed. I said I was done being available as a domestic worker and would only be a grandmother by choice. We extended our stay and relaxed more. At noon, I checked my phone. Marcus had sent 3 messages saying he and Tiffany had talked all night. He said she admitted they might not have treated me well and asked to talk. I noticed there was no real apology, so I didn't answer yet. I got home around 5. The house felt different. At 6, the doorbell rang. Marcus was standing there alone. He looked exhausted. We sat in the living room in silence until he apologized. He admitted that for 2 years he had treated me like an employee instead of his mother. He said he felt ashamed. I told him this wasn't just about the wedding. It was about years of assuming I was always available. He agreed and said he never stopped to think if it was fair. He said Tiffany felt ashamed too and wanted to apologize. I asked Marcus directly if Tiffany respected me or just saw me as useful. He said the two had been mixed up, but now she understood. I asked him if he saw me as his mother or his problem solver. He admitted he had lost sight of that. I told him things had to change. He needed to ask, not assume. I needed to be treated as a guest, not staff. I had the right to say no without guilt. And if Tiffany ever disrespected me again, he had to defend me. He agreed to everything. When he asked for forgiveness, I told him forgiveness comes from actions, not words. If Tiffany wanted to apologize sincerely, I would listen. A few days later, Marcus called and asked if Tiffany could come. I agreed. On Thursday at 4, Tiffany arrived. She looked different, simple clothes, no makeup, no forced smile. She looked nervous and vulnerable. She sat quietly and finally spoke. She apologized for everything she had said, admitting it was cruel, disrespectful, and wrong. Why did you say those things? I asked. Tiffany looked down. She said she was only 26 and had never had a mother-in-law before. Her mother died when she was 15, and her stepmother never cared about her. When she met Marcus and me, she didn't know how to handle having a mother figure again. She admitted that she felt intimidated by me, by my confidence, my skills, and how much the family loved me. Instead of dealing with those feelings, she treated me like an employee. I told her that didn't explain why she spoke about me so cruelly to her sister. After a long silence, she said that when people feel insecure, they sometimes try to feel better by making others seem less important. She admitted it was wrong. Tiffany said that when I didn't come to the wedding and she read my letter, she realized she had been trying to make Marcus choose her comfort over his own mother. She said she now felt ashamed, guilty, and sad because she lost the chance to have a real relationship with the woman who raised the man she loved. For the first time, her tears felt real. I asked her directly if she wanted a real relationship with me, or if she was only trying to fix things for Marcus. She admitted that at first it was for Marcus, but later she realized she had also lost the chance to have a mother figure again. I told her I couldn't replace her mother, but I could be a respectful mother-in-law if respect went both ways. She agreed and promised to stop assuming my help, to ask first and to respect my answers, even if I said no. Tiffany looked down. She said she was only 26 and had never had a mother-in-law before. Her mother died when she was 15, and her stepmother never cared about her. When she met Marcus and me, she didn't know how to handle having a mother figure again. She admitted that she felt intimidated by me, by my confidence, my skills, and how much the family loved me. Instead of dealing with those feelings, she treated me like an employee. I told her that didn't explain why she spoke about me so cruelly to her sister. After a long silence, she said that when people feel insecure, they sometimes try to feel better by making others seem less important. She admitted it was wrong. Tiffany said that when I didn't come to the wedding and she read my letter, she realized she had been trying to make Marcus choose her comfort over his own mother. She said she now felt ashamed, guilty, and sad because she lost the chance to have a real relationship with the woman who raised the man she loved. For the first time, her tears felt real. I asked her directly if she wanted a real relationship with me, or if she was only trying to fix things for Marcus. She admitted that at first it was for Marcus, but later she realized she had also lost the chance to have a mother figure again. I told her I couldn't replace her mother, but I could be a respectful mother-in-law if respect went both ways. She agreed and promised to stop assuming my help, to ask first and to respect my answers, even if I said no. They told me they respected me for standing up for myself. That call gave me a quiet sense of pride. I hadn't only defended my dignity within my family, others had noticed too. 3 months after the wedding, Tiffany invited me to lunch, just the two of us. At a small cafe near my home, we had the most honest talk we'd ever shared. She told me she had started therapy after the wedding. She realized she struggled with mother figures. After her mother died, she learned to protect herself by putting older women down. She admitted she felt threatened by me because I reminded her of everything she lost. Instead of grieving, she convinced herself that mothers didn't matter. She said therapy helped her face that buried pain. Now she felt freer and grateful for a second chance with me. She asked if we could start over and get to know each other as people, not as roles. I agreed. She asked about my own dreams, and I told her I had always wanted to write a book about my grandmother's recipes and our family stories. She encouraged me to start, reminding me that it's never too late. That conversation stayed with me, and soon I began writing. 6 months after the wedding, Marcus and Tiffany invited me to dinner and shared their news. They were expecting a baby. They told me they didn't want to assume anything from me. They wanted me to choose what kind of grandmother I wanted to be. I told them I wanted to help when needed, but also keep my own life and dreams. They fully supported that. A year later, I published my book, Cooking with Love, Serving with Dignity. Tiffany helped promote it, and Marcus hosted the launch at his home. I told the guests the book wasn't just about recipes, but about dignity, respect, and the difference between helping with love and being used. Afterward, Tiffany told me I had inspired the book. She said my strength taught her that love and self-respect can exist together. She asked if she could call me Mom Charlotte. I said yes. As I signed copies that night, I knew skipping the wedding had been the right choice. I had regained my dignity and built a family based on respect. At 73, with a book published and a grandchild on the way, I understood one thing clearly. Sometimes saying no is the strongest way to say yes to yourself.